Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Decaturish.com forum for Atlanta Board of Education District 3. My name is Dan Wisenhunt. I'm your host. I am also the editor and publisher of Decaturish.com. Our guests today are candidates Ken Zeff. Ken, hello.
Morning.
And Michelle Olympiadis, who is the incumbent. Michelle Olympiadis, how are you this morning?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Cannot complain. So the way this is going to work, everyone, is we're going to give each candidate 2 minutes to make an opening statement, and then we're going to give them 2 minutes to answer each question. We'll either end when we get through all the questions or we run out of time. We're going to wrap the forum around 11. So with that, we're going to get right into it. Ken, you have 2 minutes to make an opening statement.
Great. Well, thanks, Dan, for convening us, and thanks to all the Decaturish readers out there. Your engagement is going to be so critical as we not just navigate through this election, but as we return Atlanta Public Schools to the achievement and the service that it can provide to all our students. My name is Ken Zeff. I'm running for the District 3 post because I think Atlanta Public Schools is adrift. We're about to hire our fourth superintendent in 5 years. We have a central office that's a bureaucracy that's bloating, grew 20% this past year. And at the same time, we're seeing literacy rates that are just devastatingly low for too many kids across the region. And I'm sure we'll get into all of that in a little bit. A little bit about myself. I'm a former superintendent of Fulton County Schools and have spent the last 20 years in public education in various capacities. Most recently, right now I run a nonprofit called Born for Life, which is a partnership of the school systems in Metro Atlanta. So I spend every day working with district leaders across the region, understanding what's working, trying to find those best practices and scaling them up. And the reality of it is that there are strategies out there that are working for other systems that we're just not plugged into. We're not committing to as a board in Atlanta Public Schools. But most importantly, I'm a parent of three students in the Midtown cluster, and that's the reason I get up. That's the reason that leads me into this effort, because I think Atlanta Public Schools greatness is out there, and if we focus as a board, if we're dialed in, we can build an Atlanta Public Schools that our city needs and our kids deserve. I look forward to being with you all this morning.
Thank you. Michelle, you have 2 minutes to make an opening statement.
Good morning. Yeah, Dan, we've known each other for a minute, right? Uh,
Yeah, I've been covering you for, well, gosh, several years at this point.
about 5.5 years or so. Yeah, which I appreciate. And I appreciate your feedback. Um, yeah. So I've been a parent in APS for 16 years. Um, my eldest is special needs, and that's really what started my advocacy, to make sure he got what he needed. And I have two younger children who've done incredibly well. My second's at Tech, with Audrey, with Ken's daughter. And then my youngest is just ahead of Jonah, who's Ken's youngest, and doing well at Tech. So very happy to serve and do what we need to do, to make sure that kids get what they need. There's a lot of work to do in APS, and there always has been. I mean, I've been here since the Hall administration. Uh, Went through, Mr. Davis, who was supposed to be with us for 3 months and ended up staying with us for 3 years. And then Dr. Kostarfin, who stayed with us for 6, and Dr. Herring, who stayed with us for 3. And I appreciate Dr. Battle, who's always bridged us over as we've transitioned through superintendents, and I'm glad that she's still with us. So with that, um, like I said, we've got a lot of work to do. There's no doubt, but we're gonna get there, and
Th-
we're getting there.
Thank you. And the first question, we will start with you, Michelle. Um, if you are, well, I'm sorry, let me back up. I added this question this morning. Michelle, what is your opinion of weapons detection systems in schools? You have 2 minutes.
I think, I mean, from a personal standpoint, and it's not professional. From a personal standpoint, I think it's very unfortunate that we have to have this in schools. But at the same time, from a professional standpoint, I have to say that unfortunately we're at a point where this needs to happen because children or students um, have access to weapons, I guess is the best way to put it, or access to, yeah, I think weapons is the best way to put it. And that's very unfortunate. And we should not be in that space at all. We should be in a space where kids feel free to go to school and not have the expectation that there's going to be something at school um, that will threaten them. And unfortunately, especially over this past week, we've seen that we have issues with weapons. And so we need to take a bigger step into considering what we're going to do and how we're going to move forward. And it's just not something that's acceptable.
Thank you. Ken, the same question is to you. What is your opinion of weapons detection systems in schools? You have 2 minutes.
Yeah, I'm dubious. I'll be honest with you. I think that we need to be very thoughtful about creating atmospheres in schools that can help induce trauma with kids and create line. I mean, if you've been to Howard Middle School and you see lines out the door, kids waiting to go through weapons systems that are not working effectively, I'm all for thoughtful, and we should have a conversation about it. But what's the most unpleasant part of travel? Right? It's TSA. No offense to any of our TSA friends out there on the call, but this ecosystem where we're criminalizing kids, we just have to be very thoughtful. When I came here from Los Angeles, we were operating schools in South Los Angeles and in Compton, Inglewoods, Watts, and we did not use generally weapon systems because we found, and those were very very challenging areas. When we invest in the relationship between a student and a teacher and create opportunities for teachers and students to have authentic interactions, when we find weapons at schools, it's generally when a student feels comfortable telling an adult that, hey, I think there's something going on over here, somebody needs to get involved. And I don't know if we build a weapon detection system that's going to be more effective than that. So if it were up to me, my first choice is invest deeply, put as many resources as possible, make sure there's a counselor in every building, or make sure whatever that school needs, they have that resource to lower that ratio. So students and adults have that relationship, because that's what's going to prevent, by the time it gets to a weapon at a school, man, we've missed a lot of opportunity. And so the way we get ahead of this is we invest deeply in our schools. I would be very careful looking at weapon systems as the only answer. There may be an answer out there to look at, but it's not where I start.
Thank you. Michelle, we're going to start this question with you. Um, if you were elected, what will you do to support reading instruction and special education services for APS students? You have 2 minutes.
Give me 1 second. We were in another room and I need to plug in my computer. So just give me.
Okay. Michelle, we lost Michelle. Okay. Well, we're gonna she'll rejoin us in a second. But we'll go ahead and start the question with Ken. Ken, if you were elected, what will you do to support reading instruction and special education services for APS students? You have 2 minutes.
Yeah, so I'd like it's to me it's an essential question. I'd like to separate. I want to talk about reading first, and then layer in the conversation about our special needs students. We got to be clear eyed about where we are. We are in a literacy crisis right now in Atlanta public schools. 9% of low income kids are reading grade level. 9%. Said another way, 91% of kids are not reading grade level. This strategy of like, oh, let's just invest in another training program for teachers, that is a band-aid for a crisis. What we need to do is a comprehensive literacy strategy. And my organization has been managing this at project managing this at Marietta, and Marietta has seen terrific gains, double digit 15, 18% gains for students in just 1 year's time, 2 years time. You need to double block reading instruction. That means give kids more time on task in reading. If a kid can't read, we need to make sure they get double the amount of time that they need, the support so they can get there. You need to invest in instructional coaches. You need to invest in instructional materials. You need a culture of literacy. This is what the board should be talking about at every opportunity. You cannot progress through the curriculum if by third grade you are not a reader, if you are not a fluent reader. There are more words in a eighth grade math textbook than numbers. You don't have access to the curriculum if you are not a reader. Now, for our special needs students, obviously, they need additional support. APS has not served them well, and you can look at the due process claims as validation for that. The first and foremost thing we need to fully staff our special ed department. We are constantly struggling with vacancies. Teachers are leaving. We cannot deliver quality instruction and supports to those students without a fully staffed department. We need to invest deeply in that department. We need to get the money out of the central office and support our special needs students, and we can do great things for all our students.
Thank you. So Michelle Olympiadis was with us. She appears to be having some technical difficulties. She, I assume, will rejoin us at some point, but in the meantime, we're just going to keep going down our list of questions, and we'll pick up with her when she rejoins the call. So the next question, Ken, is the school board recently voted to keep its millage rate at 20.5 mils, which is still a tax increase due to increasing property values. Do you support a lower millage rate for school taxes in Atlanta? You have 2 minutes.
It's just you and me having coffee now, Dan. It's nice. I got mine.
What it is. I'm having a Celsius, but same deal, same vibe.
You kids and your drinks.
Yeah.
Look. So first of all, I appreciate the way you frame this question, because yes, they kept millage rate the same, but that actually means that there was what they call a backdoor tax increase because properties tax increase. By the APS's calculation, it was a 9.7% increase. So that it's going to affect different people differently. But so the taxpayer is getting a bill, and that bill is probably mine arrived last week. I assume everybody else's is on the way. So let's think about that for a second. Your tax bill increased. Your central office budget increased 20%. We're cycling through superintendents. So the superintendent that the current board let go is being paid out about $200,000 not to work anymore. And in addition to an interim superintendent being paid her full salary. Your question was, is the taxpayer being charged too much? The taxpayer has been exceptionally generous to Atlanta Public Schools. We are the highest funded district in the state of Georgia, $23,500 per kid. I'll say that one more time because sometimes I say it too fast. $23,500 per kid. That's how much money we get. And yet, we talked earlier about the results for our students. The dollars need to flow to our. Is the tax bill too high? I'm not here to tell folks that we need to lower the tax bill. What I am here to tell you is that we need to do a better job of stewarding the funds. The funds need to go to the location. We still have teachers reaching into their pockets. We have schools that can't afford Saturday programs, can't afford after-school programs, robotics programs, whatever they want. We need to invest deeply, move the money out of the central office, get it to our schools, and then demand better results.
Thank you. Next question. How would you address the achievement gap among students from different socioeconomic backgrounds in our district?
That's a great continuation of the last question, because what is it that we lost during COVID? We lost time with teachers and students. And so what is it that I'll give you an example. My kids at Midtown High School, they have a Saturday program where the kids come in on Saturday every couple of weeks with the teacher. A teacher gets paid double their normal daily rate. They feed the kids Chick-fil-A. They get more class time, more instructional time. That program was developed by the teachers, developed by the principal. It gets $0 from the central office. $0 from Atlanta Public Schools is paying for that program. Every nickel of that program comes from the Midtown High School Foundation, which has been very generous to its students. So let's put that in perspective, and let me tie that to this equity question. So it's great that the taxpayers paying a lot of money. It's great that the Midtown Foundation is paying to fill in this gap to help address this equity gap. What happens in South Atlanta? What happens in West Atlanta where there is no foundation that can pay for a Saturday school? Now, I'm not here to say that every school needs to have Saturday school. That's up to the school if that's what the school wants to do. But every school needs the resources to run the programs that they want, whether it's more field trips, whether it's after school programs, whatever it is. Every school needs that opportunity. When the money's stuck in the central office, it doesn't happen. And so what happens, these achievement gaps widen. What students need are more time with teachers, more time in the presence of content. And if we don't focus on getting resources to the schools, we're not going to make that happen for our students. And these achievement gaps, and I don't even like to call them achievement gaps, they're opportunity gaps, because students won't have the opportunity to perform and won't have the opportunity to achieve their potential.
Michelle, it looks like you've rejoined us. Can you hear us okay?
Yes, I'm sorry. Yes, I'm so sorry.
You're fine. It's all right. These things happen. We're gonna jump back in. We're gonna hand this question off to you. We just asked Ken, so now we're gonna ask you. How would you address the achievement gap among students from different socioeconomic backgrounds in our district? You have 2 minutes.
I appreciate the question. We've had since the Hall administration, so we're backing up to, cheating scandal. We've had more than 10 years, it's probably about 12 years of issues of addressing reading discrepancies. I do believe that we do have an administration right now that is focused on addressing literacy K through 3. 3 foundations, which is a Orton Gillingham based methodology, which would help us get to where we need to be. But we also need to address what's going on in middle school and high school with respect to kids or students. We have an issue. We have a serious issue that's been lagging for a very long time. And something that needs to be addressed by the administration. I don't really know what to say other than the fact that I am one board member, and you have to have consensus. But I am one board member who has been advocating for this for a very, very long time, even before I ran for the board. I've been doing this since I was PTA president at Morningside, explaining the fact that we have to address reading with our younger children, and again with our middle schoolers and high schoolers, but with our younger children especially, so that they have the opportunity to succeed in school.
Thank you. Michelle, we're gonna start this next question with you, and then we'll give Ken a chance to answer it. What measures would you take to improve graduation rates and reduce dropout rates in Atlantic public schools? You have 2 minutes.
Dan, appreciate that. I think I'm just going to be honest with you. I think with respect to high school graduation rates, we inflate what our high school graduation rates are, and I don't know if that's good or bad, but I would like for us to be more sincere. What I would like to see is an opportunity for kids to really have a sincere pathway to get to a school that will help them have a real graduation opportunity. And I mean that in a real way, meaning that I think high school graduation rates are something that the state and I think it's something that folks want to see have a high rate. And so we've made sure that we've raised our rates, and there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, fine. But what I think there is an opportunity is to make sure that children have the opportunity, or students have the opportunity, to go to a school where they can actually get a really good education and move forward. And it doesn't, I mean, there are plenty of schools. We have tons of schools that offer plenty of opportunities. But we need to find schools that are willing to make sure that children have opportunities to move forward.
Thank you. Ken, the same question is to you. What measures would you take to improve graduation rates and reduce dropout rates in Atlanta public schools? You have 2 minutes.
Yeah, I see that graduation rate for high school kids is not the measure that we should be focusing on. I think we've been focusing on it for a little bit. It's nice that kids walk the stage. 84% of kids walk the stage now. But we need to. So the answer to your question, what measures does the board need to take? We need to be honest with parents. We need to be transparent, and we need to increase our investment. Honest and transparent. If 40% of kids are at grade level in math and reading, even less, 35% reading overall, how are we at an 84% graduation rate? How is that possible? How is it that something's happening in the last couple of years, or is it the reality that high school graduation is not an indication of mastery? It's an indication of completion. That kids went through the classes, they did credit recovery, they did whatever programs they need to do to get across the stage. I'm not saying it's terrible that more kids are graduating high school. That is fine, but we should not go to sleep at night thinking that we're doing a better job educating kids when we look at the data of mastery and it's too low. When we look at the completion rates in high school, in post-secondary, we see it's too low. So what should the board do? The board, because I think it's important, you asked a specific question, the board should give a specific answer. We need to invest more deeply in our school. Right now, our high school counselor ratio is about 450 to 1. Why is it so low? How are kids navigating to post-secondary when they get 25, 30 minutes a year with a counselor, especially in kids that come from homes that are that don't have a lot of supports? If we push more money to the schools, we can lower that counseling ratio, have high expectations for students, we can give them the support, then they can make good decisions. They can go to technical colleges, they can figure out what their path is, but they can make the decisions that are right for them, and the board can do that by getting out of the way and putting resources in our schools' hands.
Thank you. The next question, we will start with Ken. Ken, how would you promote the integration of technology in classrooms for all students? 2 minutes.
Yeah, technology is a great servant. It's a lousy master. And so I want to be sure that I think the pendulum has swung too far in Atlanta public schools. I think there's too many directives around programs like Amplify. I've been knocking on doors nonstop for the last 3 or 4 months. And one thing that I hear from parents is, gosh, it feels like instead of instruction, we're being told that we have to use these electronic platforms. That's not the right answer for our kids. They need to be, they are technology natives, so they do understand how to navigate, different platforms. I think through SPLOS, we've been able to give them, the taxpayer has funded more devices for kids, but we need a thoughtful opportunity. We need to engage teacher voice in this conversation. When the directives come from the central office instead of the Go team, who has very limited role in curriculum right now, when the Go team can tell you that teachers are saying, look, my kid is spending all his time on his phone. My kid is spending all time on the internet instead of participating in instruction. That's because we're not putting teacher voice at the center of this conversation. If we can put teacher voice in this conversation, we can do a much better job of integrating technology in a useful way. It's a lousy master. We need to make sure there's obviously a role for technology, but the teachers need to have their fingerprints on how that works in the classroom, and not central office directives telling folks how to use technology and when is the appropriate time.
Thank you. Michelle, the same question is to you. How would you promote the integration of technology in classrooms for all students? You have 2 minutes. You're on mute, You're on mute.
Can you hear me
I can
now?
hear you now. Yep, I'll start over.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. No, I got you. You're good. I got you. Uh, you know, we need to have technology in our classrooms. There's no doubt. It's just part of what our lifestyle is at this point. However, there is a breadth of having regular, or I guess better than regular, just old school teaching in our classrooms for our kids. I think that's very important. You know, at this point, my youngest is in 10th grade. I've got one in college and one is special needs, and technology is very important for them to engage with what's going on in the world and for them to know what's going on. And I don't negate that ever. However, it is important that they also have real engagement with their classmates and their friends, and whatever it is, FaceTime, in person, whatever it needs to be. It's very important that that's part of their lifestyle, because it's very, very important. And yeah, I think Dan, you're much younger than me. Ken's a little bit younger than me, but I think we all agree that that or we can all agree that fundamental interaction is very important for
Thank
your
you.
lifestyle.
Thank you. And the next question will start with you, Michelle. How would you address the issue of bullying and promote a safe and welcoming environment for all students? You have 2 minutes, Michelle.
Dan, I appreciate that question. I'm very well. Uh, I was very upset to learn at Howard that we had an issue with respect to what was going on with students. And what I can say is, I hope that administration can be more objective and more open-minded with respect to how they address what's going on with students. It's tough. This middle school and high school age is very, very tough. However, I do believe the administration can do better, or do more. I think that's the right word, is do more to address what's happening, to make sure that kids feel respected and understand where they're coming from. And to be quite honest, I think the majority of students do have a perspective of how to be kind, and they just have to push forward with their friends, and let them know that being kind is much more important than being adverse. I think is the right word.
Thank you. Same question to you, Ken. How would you address the issue of bullying and promote a safe and welcoming environment for all students? 2 minutes.
Thanks, Dan. And I want to be clear, like, so what's the board's role here? Not just, yes, bullying is tragic, and we need to make sure that kids do come to welcoming. We all, I have kids. I want to make sure they feel welcome. So what can the board do? The board has an obligation to make sure teachers feel supported, because teachers are the ones that are creating these that create an environment for kids. They create culture in the school. Right now, if you talk to teachers, 50% say they're burned out. 60% say they would not recommend this profession to their kids. So you have a profession right now that is reeling. It is reeling. And so so what do we expect the environment to feel like when teachers are so overwhelmed by all the obligations they have, and by not being treated like professionals, not having their voice in their work? We're not getting these welcome, inclusive environments because we're not supporting our teachers. So what is the board's role? The board's role, we can make this better. We can make this better for teachers. We can, again, as we invest in go teams, as we push out authority to go teams, instead of having reams of directives being lobbed into the schoolhouse, the go team can help set the culture for that school. And when a teacher has voice, when a teacher feels respected, my mom was a teacher for 25 years in Chicago public schools, and she knows what it's like. We've all been in schools. We know what it's like when we're not being respected, we're not treated as professionals. That makes it hard for teachers to build these welcoming, inclusive environments. So as your board member, that would be what I would do. I would make sure our teacher core feels good about their job. They look forward to Monday. They feel respected, both financially and professionally. And then I believe that is the key to creating an environment that's more welcoming for kids.
Thank you. Next question, we will start with Ken. What efforts would you make to encourage alumni to give back to APS and support current students? 2 minutes.
It's something that we don't do enough of, because again, in a centralized system, it's hard to access the system, right? If you're an alumni right now, matter of fact, I'm not on the website right now, but go try to find how you would get plugged in if you were an alumni right now. I think it would be really challenging. The way you would plug in, the way you should be able to plug in, is through your local school. That is the unit of change, is each individual schoolhouse. And so as we restore the go teams to what the original vision was, and again, that requires the board admitting that they don't have all the answers, and they're not going to meddle in every little decision. They're going to make the hard decision that bureaucracies have to make, to say, look, we're going to hold ourselves to stay in our lane. We're going to push decision making out to schools. So then the school has resources, the school has decision making, and then if you're an alumni, you go to that go team, you go to that school, and that school can actually give you opportunities to get plugged in, because they're in charge of what's happening in their building. So to me, that is the immediate way. It's not about one-off programs. It's about building an institution where we build this muscle that our local schools have responsibility, have resources, have decision-making. Because I've been to the central office a bunch of times. I can't find a single kid there anywhere. I've been up and down that building. There at the schoolhouse, putting authority there will create pathways for folks that want to give back to their local school in a meaningful, authentic way.
Thank you. Michelle, the same question is to you. What efforts would you make to encourage alumni to give back to APS and support current students? You have 2 minutes.
I appreciate the question. I do believe you've got alumni who support schools. Let's talk about Washington. Let's talk about Douglas. Let's talk about Mays. Let's talk about Farrell. Let's talk about South Atlanta. Let's talk about Grady, which is now Midtown, and Jackson. But the first few that I mentioned, their alumni are so engaged in supporting what their community is trying to bring up. And I think that's thoughtful and important and real. They want to do the job. And I think, honestly, I don't need 2 minutes. I think that's really what it is. They want to do the job, and they're there, and they're doing the best in their community to bring up their community, to respect their high schools and their cluster, to be quite frank.
Thank you. Okay, next question. We will start with you, Michelle. What role do you believe mental health services should play in addressing school violence and promoting overall student well-being in Atlanta public schools?
So to be clear, we have Atlanta Public Schools. It's not me. It's Atlanta Public Schools has implemented I don't know what the right term would be, has implemented facilities or access. I think access is probably the right term, for kids to, or for students to have access to supports to help them where they need them. And I hope that parents understand that as well, because that's part of the, as part of the, it's part of the equation, so to speak. But yes, we as a board, we have made we've made measures to make sure that there's access for kids to understand that they have access to supports for them, because we know that that's important, and we've known that's important. I would even want to say before COVID, but I think COVID really brought it up to light, so to speak. But from a special needs parent, it's always been something that's very important for folks to understand that they have access to that.
Thank you. Ken, the same question is to you. What role do you believe mental health services should play in addressing school violence and promoting overall student well-being in APS?
Well, if a student is not prepared to learn, then the most high quality instruction that a teacher can offer is going to be met with resistance. We know that COVID has taken a toll on our kids. We know that the socialization has been really hard on kids, and so we need to honor that. We need to respect that, and we need to deal with it in a really. But here's a perfect example. It's a really vivid example of it affected kids very differently in very different ecosystems and very different ages, and every kid had a different story. The three people on this call probably had a very different experience during COVID at different times. And so what the district has done is, having these sort of one size fits all special or social emotional, learning moments in the classroom, or, Hazel Health, which sounds great, which is a one time, a number of folks can call, but I'm not sure if it's meeting parents where they are. And that's what we need to do more of. We need to meet kids and parents where they are. And by building that relationship, again, all of this happens in a relationship between a teacher and a kid. And when that relationship is strong, that teacher can light a fire within that child and can create all opportunities and get them connected to all resources. So we as a board need to do everything we can to remove any roadblocks or any barriers and pour deeply into that teacher so they can provide those services for their kid or connect them with the services that they need. If central office directives, one size fits all, it's not going to work here. It's never worked, but it's definitely not going to work going forward. And we need to be really, really aggressive and work really diligently to push those resources out so our teachers feel supported and they can support their kids.
Thank you. Ken, we will start the next question with you. What steps would you take to ensure that APS is protecting the rights and safety of LGBTQ students? 2 minutes.
Yeah, it's an important question, and we need to make sure that we are creating environments. And this really goes back to your question before about how do we create inclusive environments. When our staff is distracted, when our staff is overwhelmed, they're not likely to understand that kid who's having a difficult experience. They're not going to be plugged into that student. I know when I was superintendent of Fulton County Schools, we had issues around this was not a new issue. And what did we do? What we found is that the principal and teachers, they know how their kids are struggling, and they know which kids are being quiet, which kids are having an unpleasant experience, or when they have those relationships, even if they miss it, if a kid feels comfortable with the teacher, they'll go to that teacher and say, hey, Mr. Wiesenhunt, I'm struggling. I'm struggling. What can you do for me? How can you help me? What resources can you connect me with? So I think it's the responsibility of the board to make sure that schools have the oxygen, they have the capacity, they have the resources when they need them to support those students. And the board needs to be unequivocal that we will make Atlanta Public Schools a welcoming environment for all students. And I think we can do that but we have to put action behind that, and that action is empowering our teachers, supporting our principals, and pushing all of our attention to the school site instead of getting stuck in the central office.
Thank you. For the record, my teacher name is Mr. Wiz, so when I'm in the classroom, that's what my mom went by when she went by Miss Wiz in
It's a more strategic name. I could
teaching
see
high school
kids
calculus,
struggling with.
so it's easier to remember. Michelle, same question to you. What steps would you take to ensure that Atlanta Public Schools is protecting the rights and safety of LGBTQ students? You have 2 minutes.
It's a super great question. I've always been an advocate of LGBTQ, and there's a few other letters there. I've always been an advocate of these students, and I think it's a very, very important that they are respected and are inclusive, and especially in a school like Midtown, where we are very open-minded and inclusive of what's happening with the kids. But again, across the district, just making sure that we're inclusive of kids, I think it's very, very important. I have no issue. I'm very supportive and want to be respectful of where they go and what they do. And like I said, just I think a better way of saying it is I envelope them into the rest of the work that I do. Like they're with me. I like, like it's natural. I don't, Dan, it's funny you ask. I'm a former ballerina, so I've known folks for a long time that have whatever their sexual decisions are for a long time since I was young, and I respect that.
Thank
and
you. That's 2 minutes on that, and we're going to move on to the next question. We're going to start with you, Michelle. What
yes,
steps should Atlanta Public Schools take to recruit and retain highly qualified teachers? You have 2 minutes.
I think the biggest step we need to take, and we've kind of moved in that direction, is raising salary. I mean, I think that's a really important step. I think another one is just explaining to folks that APS is a great place to work and a good place to be. That's a little bit harder. I think the money walks.
Okay. Ken, same question to you. What steps should Atlanta Public Schools take to recruit and retain highly qualified teachers in the school district? 2 minutes.
Yeah, let me draw a little distinction then, just for our viewers out there to keep this thing lively, right? So Michelle said salaries and great place to work, and that is just not what the data is telling us. The data is telling that teachers are leaving because of burnout. Just telling them it's a great place to work is exactly why teachers are leaving, because we're not being honest that it is not a great place to work. Again, don't believe me. Look at survey data. Look at exit data from teachers. Yes, money is part of it, but money is the second or third reason why teachers leave. Is an extra $1,000 by November? You don't remember that extra $1,000 when you dread Mondays. And these are really difficult jobs. We're asking so much from our teachers right now. And again, we talked about before, you have to use Amplify. You have a principal that doesn't have time to support you. You don't have instructional coaches in your classroom to help you. You don't have enough counseling support for your students. The list goes on and on of the things that we leave at the doorstep of our teachers. And if we don't get serious about supporting them, ed schools are not producing enough kids for us to replace the teachers that we're leaving. We need to make sure that we retain our highest quality teachers, and we do that by treating them as professionals. The number one thing we need to do is we need to treat them as professionals. We need to give them a voice in what happens in the classroom. We need to make sure that they're supported in professional development, that they feel like this is a great place to work, not because we tell them it's a great place to work, but we show them with our action, we show them with how we invest our dollars, and we show them with how we talk about how valuable they are to the future of our city and our students.
Thank you. And with that, that is the end of our questions. So we're going to move into closing statements. Ken, we're going to start with you. You have 2 minutes, and then we're going to let Michelle have the last word. 2 minutes, Ken.
Well, thank you, Mr. Wiz, Professor Wiz. I mean, I'm not sure
Mr.
what you get by
Decaturish, Dan, whatever you want to say.
Decaturish, Dan, right? I'm sure it's all positive stuff. Look, I appreciate you taking the time and convening us here. This is a really unique time in the story of Atlanta Public Schools. As I started at the beginning, we're going to be hiring our fourth superintendent in 5 years. We need to get this right. Otherwise, we're going to be here in 18 months again, talking about how we have a superintendent transition and how we're buffeting from side to side. And the conversation is going to be about that and not about our teachers, not about our literacy rates, not about how we're treating taxpayer resources. So I encourage everybody as we approach November 7th and early voting starts next week, this is when you hold the board accountable for the results that you expect. When I come back to you in 4 years, I'm going to tell you about a system where we have a superintendent that we're proud of that's getting up every day and fighting for kids, where we've made tremendous progress on literacy like other districts have in Metro Atlanta. We're not going to settle for being last. We're going to settle for making sure our kids have the right opportunities and are successful. And we're going to get this resource. We're not going to accept a budget that taxpayers have to pay 9.7% increase on, and the dollars are in the central office, not in the schools. We can do great things for our kids. We can do great things for our city, but we have to be focused. We have to take advantage of this opportunity to lean into this moment and make tough decisions for our families, for our kids, and ultimately our whole city will prosper when we get this right. Thanks for being with us today.
Thank you. Michelle Olympiadis, 2 minutes to make your closing statement.
Yeah, I'm trying to get back on, which I'm not gonna. Can you hear me?
Yep, we can hear you just fine.
Okay, you can't see me, but you can hear me.
I can hear you. We can see you and we can hear you.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Dan, I really appreciate it. You're always on point. I think that's something I need to say. I mean, you're always making sure that people are informed, and I think that that's very important. With respect to, where I am and where I'm going, I'd like to run one last time, which is what I've told people. And just to be fair, there's still a lot of work to be done. And I just want to be clear. I want to be very clear about superintendents, because this is a misnomer. Mr. Davis was with, and I know I got 2 minutes. Mr. Davis was with us for 3 years. Dr. Kostrofan was with us for 6 years, and Dr. Herring was with us for 3 years. That's 12 years. And Dr. Battle has bridged us every time we've needed her. So I don't know where the 5 years and 5 terms come from, and I don't respect that, because I think the school system has done its best to perform. Yes, we've got a lot to do. Third grade reading is still an issue, and we need to step it up. And then we need to step up what's going on in middle school and high school, and there's no doubt. However,
Thank you. That is time for your statement. I do apologize. I have to be fair to all the candidates. But thank you. Thank you, Michelle, for your service on the school board. Public service is very important. Thank you to Ken for being interested in public service. Thank you to all of the people who are running this year, who have an interest in public service. Local government requires people to stand up and be a part of it for it to work properly. And so that is appreciated. This was the forum for the Atlanta Board of Education District 3 seat. That is the school district that serves Kirkwood, Eastlake, several other clusters as well. Election is November 7th. Early voting is October 16th. Decaturish votes. DecaturISHvotes.com is where you're going to find all of our elections coverage. You're going to find our candidate Q&As. You're going to find videos of this forum and other forums. You'll find out information about early voting, all at that website. If you appreciate the opportunities that we've provided this election cycle to hear from the candidates, I don't think there's any other website that's doing this kind of work. Visit supportyourlocalnews.com and sign up and give something to our fall fundraiser. You know, it takes a lot of extra money to cover elections and still cover the things that we normally cover. It's important to have reader support for that. So if you can go to supportyourlocalnews.com after watching this and throw in a little money to help us out, we would appreciate it. That is all the time we have. We are going to upload this to our YouTube channel and our Facebook page following this meeting. So we encourage you to look for that video there as well. Thank you so much for watching, and we will start our Decatur School Board forum next. Have a nice day, everyone.